At first, no one noticed anything strange. People went to work, drank coffee, looked at their phones, unaware of the changes around them. The changes around them became increasingly obvious. The street clock froze at 3:47 a.m., and the hands no longer moved. Those who understood first were in no hurry now. In Tokyo, an office worker stopped in the middle of an intersection, staring at the frozen traffic light. At the frozen traffic light, which had not changed color for 20 minutes straight. Cars honked their horns, but the order of traffic was collapsing before their eyes. The sky remained dark before everyone's eyes, even though dawn should have been breaking. The stars did not fade, and the moon hung motionless in its usual place. The hands on the Big Ben Tower in London stood still. A tourist from Brazil took a photo of them, not knowing it would be the last picture ever taken. Thousands of cameras around the world captured the last frame of normality. In New York, a taxi driver noticed that his wristwatch had stopped. All mechanisms stopped at the same time: electronic, mechanical, atomic. Scientists in observatories recorded the impossible. The Earth was rotating. The Earth was rotating, but time had stopped flowing. Physicists could not explain the paradox. In Paris, a woman stopped, forgetting why she was walking. Stopping at a shop window, she saw her reflection. Her face seemed unfamiliar, as if it belonged to another person from the past. No more memories came from the past. The first to notice this was an old man in Beijing who was trying to remember his grandson's name, but couldn't. There was no way to explain the strange feeling of emptiness in his head. In Moscow, a schoolgirl forgot the multiplication table, which she had known by heart since childhood. Poets forgot the poems they had memorized. In Madrid, an artist couldn't remember how to mix paints to get the right shade of green. Green trees stood motionless without wind. Leaves did not rustle, birds did not sing, and the world was plunged into a strange silence. Panic spread slowly, like a thick fog. People called each other, but the conversations gradually became meaningless and short. Gradually, everyone realized that not only the past was being forgotten, but also the present. In Berlin, a doctor forgot how to perform an operation right in the middle of it. As the world forgot, it changed irreversibly. Pilots forgot how to fly planes, but somehow they continued to fly somewhere by inertia. Skills and knowledge disappeared from people's minds. In Sydney, a programmer looked at the code without understanding the symbols on the screen at all. Very soon, a real catastrophe began. Drivers forgot the rules of the road, surgeons forgot anatomy, teachers forgot their subjects completely. Universities were completely empty because professors did not remember what to teach. Students sat in lecture halls, staring silently at blank notebooks. Mothers who had forgotten their children's names cried silently. In Cairo, a woman looked at the baby in her arms, not recognizing his face at all. It was impossible to tell who was who. Spouses became strangers to each other. In Rome, a couple sat at the table, unable to remember. A bride couldn't remember her wedding, looking at her wedding ring. In Bangkok, a monk forgot the sacred texts he read every day. The day did not come, and that was more frightening than anything else. Scientists put forward theories, but always forgot them a minute after formulating them. Only basic memory remained: breathing, walking, seeing. But language became poorer with each passing hour. Words disappeared from the lexicon forever. Entire languages were lost forever. In an Indian village, an elder forgot a rare dialect that had been spoken only there since ancient times. Long-cherished traditions were being erased from collective memory. In Japan, a tea ceremony master forgot the sequence of actions, dropping his hands helplessly. People looked helplessly at familiar things, not knowing their names. In London, a librarian wandered among the shelves, not understanding the purpose of the books. No one could read books anymore. Letters turned into meaningless squiggles. In Buenos Aires, a writer wept over his manuscript, losing its meaning. The meaning of existence slipped away along with memory. In Istanbul, a philosopher tried to grasp a thought, but it dissolved as quickly as the morning fog. Degradation set in quickly. Adults forgot how to use cutlery. In a Paris restaurant, diners ate with their hands, completely unashamed. The concept of time completely disappeared from consciousness. People did not know how much time had passed, an hour or a day. The sun did not rise, confirming the anomaly. Scientists tried to record the anomaly, but forgot the results of their experiments. At CERN, physicists looked at their instruments without understanding the readings at all. There were no experts left in any field. Everyone became equal in their ignorance. In Washington, politicians forgot the laws and the Constitution. No lawyer remembered the country's Constitution. The courts closed because the judges forgot the laws. Criminals were released just like that. This is how civilization collapsed from within. Not because of war or disaster, but because of oblivion. In Seoul, a police officer took off his uniform, forgetting his duties. Duties disappeared along with social roles. Teachers were no different from students, doctors from patients. The hierarchies of society instantly dissolved into nothingness. People's priorities changed instantly. Money lost its meaning when no one remembered its value. In Zurich, a banker looked at banknotes in bewilderment. People wandered aimlessly through the streets in bewilderment. Work was forgotten. Careers were meaningless. In Toronto, offices were empty. Employees had simply left. They walked away from what no longer made sense. Cities plunged into a slow and strange chaos. Traffic lights didn't work, but there were few accidents. Few people remembered how to drive. Cars froze in the middle of the roads. In Los Angeles, freeways turned into parking lots with abandoned cars everywhere. Unanswered questions could be heard everywhere. "Who am I?" people asked their reflections. In Amsterdam, a man did not recognize himself in the mirror at all. People's own faces became completely foreign to them. Identity faded along with memory. In Melbourne, a crowd gathered in the square, all equally confused. Children and old people were equally lost. Age ceased to mean anything. In Athens, a grandmother played with her grandson, both having completely forgotten their relationship. Family ties were completely erased from memory. People lived among strangers, even in their own homes. In Dubai, a family dined in silence like strangers. Like alien planets separated by emptiness, relatives sat at the table. In Manhattan, a mother could not remember if she had ever given birth to children. Memories of the past never returned. Photographs did not help. The faces in the pictures seemed unfamiliar. In Warsaw, albums lay open, useless. All records and documents became useless. In Helsinki, the archivist looked at the papers, unable to understand the letters. The history of humanity was being erased before our eyes. Culture was disappearing before everyone's eyes. Musicians forgot their notes. Actors forgot their roles. In Milan, the opera was interrupted. The singer fell silent, forgetting her aria in the middle. In the middle of the performance, ballet dancers froze, forgetting their movements. In Vienna, the orchestra fell silent. The musicians put down their instruments, confused and completely mute. Complex technologies stopped working altogether. Without specialists, power stations shut down. In São Paulo, power cuts began gradually and slowly in different areas. Slowly but surely, the world was plunging into darkness. Not only physical darkness from the absence of light, but also metaphorical darkness from the complete loss of knowledge. Science was finally forgotten. In observatories, telescopes gazed at the motionless sky, but observers understood absolutely nothing of what they saw. Absolutely everything became alien and incomprehensible. The simplest mechanisms seemed like miracles of technology. In Tel Aviv, a man looked at a door handle, puzzled. Puzzled by the opening mechanism, he simply pushed the door. In Singapore, an engineer forgot how an elevator worked and was stuck between floors for a long time, frightened. No one knew how long the anomaly would last, but no one asked that question anymore. In Copenhagen, people simply lived in the present moment, a moment that lasted forever in frozen time. Hunger came and went, but people forgot to eat regularly. Instincts also gradually weakened. The connection between action and consequence was gradually lost. In Lima, a cook forgot that fire burns and carelessly grabbed a hot frying pan with his hand. People were careless about danger, forgetting fear. In Vancouver, a child walked along the edge of a roof, unaware of the height and the risk of falling to his death. They no longer feared death because they had forgotten its existence. In Caracas, hospitals were empty. Patients did not know why they should be treated, and doctors did not know how to live in a world without memory and time. In Reykjavik, a group of people gathered around a fire, silently staring at the flames for a long time, mesmerized. They sat motionless for a long time, as if meditating. Speech became increasingly primitive. Complex phrases were forgotten, leaving only simple words: water, light, heat, cold. The cold crept into homes when the heating was turned off. In Oslo, people gathered in groups, instinctively warming each other with their body heat, like primitive animals. Basic instincts manifested themselves primitively. In Nairobi, panic over food began, but quickly subsided. People always forgot about hunger within a minute. There was always a feeling that something important had been lost. In Bogotá, a priest stood in an empty church, unable to remember his prayers, but feeling a sense of emptiness. The emptiness inside was felt more and more acutely. Without the past, people became shells. In Beirut, an old man cried, not knowing why, feeling only an irreplaceable loss. Humanity experienced an irreplaceable loss. In Brussels, a crowd of silent people gathered in the square. They looked at each other, searching for something in common. There was only one thing they had in common: the feeling of being here and now. In Mexico City, an artist drew simple lines on the wall, not remembering professional techniques. His professional skills had disappeared, leaving only pure, childlike creativity. In Glasgow, children and adults played together, equal in their ignorance and purity of perception of the world. The world around them became smaller and smaller in people's minds. The horizon of perception narrowed. In Jakarta, people saw only what was directly in front of them at that moment. Now there was no past and no future. In Lisbon, a fisherman looked at the ocean, not remembering what the sea was, but feeling its call. Many who were instinctively drawn to nature heard its call. Cities emptied, people went to the water, to the forests, to the wide, free, open spaces everywhere. Small groups of silent people formed everywhere. They sat in circles, looking at the frozen stars. Language disappeared, leaving only simple gestures and glances. Simple emotions were still accessible. In Quebec, two people embraced, not knowing who they were to each other, but feeling an invisible connection between their souls. A connection finer than memory remained between their souls. In Budapest, a musician picked up a guitar, not remembering the chords, but his fingers found the strings themselves, drawing out sounds. The sounds were simple, but sincere. All over the world, people created primitive art. In St. Petersburg, a woman sang without words, her voice pouring out in pure melody. Human nature became pure, cleansed of the layers of civilization. In Stockholm, a group of people danced around a bonfire, not remembering the dances, moving freely. Free from conventions and rules, people rediscovered simple joys. In Prague, laughter rang out for no reason, simply from the feeling of being alive in the moment. The present became the only time of existence. In Cape Town, the sunset did not come, but the sky slowly turned pink on the horizon, mesmerizing observers with its incredible beauty. Life itself seemed incredible in this frozen world. In Wellington, a bird froze in mid-air, as if suspended by invisible threads, which was unusually strange. Animals behaved strangely, too. In Bangalore, dogs sat motionless, staring into nowhere. Cats froze in mid-jump. Nature also fell under the spell. The whole world was under the spell of time. In Quito, the wind stopped suddenly. Leaves hung in the air. The rain stopped, with drops hanging magically in space. Reality looked magical, transformed into a surreal painting. In Hanoi, the river stopped flowing. The water froze like glass, reflecting the motionless sky perfectly. A completely incomprehensible silence enveloped the planet. There was no noise from cars, voices, or music. In Geneva, people could hear their own heartbeats loud and clear. They could clearly feel their pulse slowing down inside. In Baghdad, an old man put his hand on his chest, feeling his heart beating slower and slower, gradually. Gradually, time stopped inside each person. In Lagos, a mother looked at her hands, noticing how they stopped moving very slowly and smoothly. People smoothly transitioned into a state of immobility. In Manchester, a soccer player froze with the ball at his feet. The referee froze with the whistle at his mouth, frozen forever. Frozen in their last movement, people became statues. In Damascus, a dancer froze in mid-jump, graceful and beautiful. Time stopped completely inside all beings. The world had finally turned into a frozen picture. In Sarajevo, a child froze, reaching out to a butterfly. The butterfly hung motionless in the air with its wings spread. All living creatures on Earth froze motionless. In Addis Ababa, a herd of antelopes froze in their tracks. A predator froze in mid-jump, never reaching its prey. The moment, frozen forever, became eternity. In San Francisco, a wave froze before the shore. A surfer froze on his board, balancing perfectly on the frozen water. The world looked beautiful in the last moment of its existence. In Shanghai, millions of people froze on the streets, each in their own pose, creating a colossal living sculpture. Humanity created a colossal gallery in the finale. In Kiev, snow hung in the air like white stars. Children froze, catching snowflakes in their palms, forever young. Young and old, rich and poor, all became equal in an eternal moment. In Montreal, man's last thought dissolved into absolute silence. The frozen planet listened to the complete silence. In Wellington, the last ray of light broke through the clouds, illuminating the motionless world. Time died, but beauty remained. The beauty of the frozen world was perfect. In Rio de Janeiro, the statue of Christ looked down on the frozen city. People froze in their carnival costumes, celebrating forever. The last moment lasted forever. In Antarctica, scientists froze at their instruments. Penguins froze on the ice. The northern lights hung over the horizon forever like an emerald curtain. Silence fell like a curtain on the theater of life. In Vienna, the last note froze in the air. The conductor froze with his baton raised. The orchestra froze on the last chord. The symphony of humanity ended with the chord of existence. In Jerusalem, the priest's prayer remained unfinished on his lips. In Mecca, pilgrims froze, bowing in eternal, unchanging worship. The world now remained in a state of unchanging peace. In Delhi, the last breath did not leave the yogi's lungs. In Bangkok, a monk froze in meditation of perfect nirvana. All of humanity reached nirvana simultaneously. In Mumbai, a crowd froze at an intersection. Each face held its last emotion: surprise, joy, sadness, fear, eternal love. Eternal love radiated from frozen lovers. In Paris, a couple froze in a kiss on a bridge. In Venice, a gondolier froze with his oar raised above the canal, frozen perfectly. The last moment of existence was perfectly preserved. In Tokyo, neon lights froze in a half-flash. In Hong Kong, skyscrapers preserved the last silhouettes in their windows, frozen forever. Frozen in space and time, all creatures became monuments to themselves. In Luxor, the pyramids looked down on frozen tourists. History came to a complete standstill. The difference between the living and the dead disappeared completely. In Pompeii, new statues joined the ancient ones. In Machu Picchu, a tourist froze while taking a photo of the frozen world. The world was no longer in motion. In space, astronauts froze in weightlessness. The International Space Station drifted with its frozen crew around the silent, frozen Earth. The universe became silent. The stars stopped twinkling. Galaxies froze in their dance of expansion. Time died not only on Earth, but everywhere in the cosmos. Absolute silence and tranquility reigned everywhere. And in this silence, the frozen world acquired a strange beauty. The beauty of the finale, of perfection, of the completeness of an eternal moment of existence. Existence was no more, but there was one last frame of being, frozen, beautiful, tragic, and majestic at the same time. The day when time stopped became the last day that lasted forever. And in this eternity, all stories, all destinies, all moments, woven into a single picture of a frozen world of beauty, froze.